Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. Now, earlier today I had a video up where we talked about Zuma and his counting ability, which is quite extraordinary for someone who used to be the president of South Africa. But I want to give Ace Magashule a lesson in history, because he obviously doesn't have his facts straight, which is not surprising. Ace Magashule is a gangster. He's only interested in taking what he can. But let's get a bit of context and I'll respond to what he has to say. While ANC Secretary-General Ace Magashule described the ongoing spate of violent protests in part of the country as criminality, not xenophobia, he warned that anti-revolutionaries were using tribalism to pit Africans against one another. Now he's sounding very much like one Julius Chameleon Malema, isn't he? Well, they're obviously in very close contact. The protests in South Africa have mainly affected parts of Gauteng. Magashule shared his thoughts at a South African Congress SASCO elections rally at Tshwane University of Technology on Wednesday. The Student Representative Council elections are expected to take place on Thursday. Now, I actually had this video up where he makes some remarks which are included in what I'm going to talk about here. I put that up, I think it was yesterday. In his address, Magashule, which was filled with song and met with rapturous applause, he cautioned South Africans against turning on their fellow African brothers and sisters. You are South Africans, but remember, you are Africans living in a continent called Africa. Never despise people who have the same skin color as us, Magashule said. He questions why the idea of a foreigner never applied to white people. Now that's what we're going to be talking about in a second. There are many others with a whitish color. You don't know them. They are there. You see them all the time. But you can't say this one, kele, kwere, Magashule said, using the derogatory term for African foreign nationals. Magashule added, as students applauded, they have never been attacked because they are also so-called foreigners, but because their color is white. Magashule said that once the continent united and solidified its relationships with other BRICS countries such as Russia, India, China and Brazil, it would mean standing up on their own and never having to ask the IMF or International Monetary Fund bailout or having to beg the USA. He said imperialist forces, racist forces, fascist forces don't want Africa united. Now, I just want to pass the comment that Magashule is one of the most racist people you can ever meet in South African politics, and he is a Secretary General of the ANC. Complete disgrace. Magashule went on to say, they must not divide us. They have succeeded to divide the ANC. He urged the students to fight for their ideals and not to become rich. Not to become rich? Magashule has stolen so much money from the public purse, and here he is trying to lecture people about wealth. Speaking to journalists after his address, Magashule said his reference to anti-revolutionaries was aimed at those who never wanted to see the ANC in power or united. I'm just saying it's a real thing. That's why we are pleading, talking to structures on the ground and leaders at different levels, saying, let's unite, he said. If we are united, then Africa will be united as the oldest liberation movement. Now, here's a history lesson for you, Ace Magashule. You are not one of the original inhabitants in southern Africa. The Bantu and Nguni tribes came down from the Cameroons area in West Africa, and they only arrived in southern Africa about the same time as Van Riebeeck and his mob arrived in Cape Town. The original inhabitants are called the Karana, the Khoi, and the San. And the difference between the way they were treated by your mob, and in particular the Zulus coming through from the north, through Mozambique, And the difference with the whites who were in the Cape was the whites kind of coexisted with these original inhabitants, the Aboriginal people, the original inhabitants of South Africa. As I said, the Krana, the Khoi, and the San. What about the Zulu? Not so good. They exterminated every single human being they came across. They wiped out the Khoi in the KwaZulu-Natal area. They wiped out the Bushmen. The Bushman paintings you find today are right up in the Drakensberg where they were chased up by the Zulus. And that is the reality. You guys are invaders. You are not inhabitants of Southern Africa. You have as much claim to the land as the white people in South Africa to do. And when it comes to being African, we're talking about whites who've been living in South Africa for hundreds of years. If that doesn't make them African, then nothing will. And if you're going to use that yardstick to measure what is African or what applies to South Africa, I would suggest that the Bantu and Nguni people go back home to Nigeria and the Cameroon, and especially now, and see how you're treated. All right, guys, please remember to subscribe to be kept informed. Ring the bell for the updates. Please like this video. And above all, stay safe. Bye for now.